So there's hundreds here, and I don't think that's going to last. I think that it's probably a lot of the mom and pop shops are going to go away, but the High Tides, the Canna Cabanas, your Value Buds, your Nova Cannabis, your SNDLs of the world are probably going to own that market.
Hello, everyone. We are Brewing Great Returns, and today's guest is Rod from POW Group. How are you doing today, Rod?
I'm doing great. How are you guys doing?
Great.
Good,
man.
Fantastic.
So what first got you into investing, and can you describe a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, I'll go through a short version. So essentially, I was born and raised in Prince Edward Island on the east coast of Canada, very small town, population of about 150,000, and very small, small town. Didn't really grow up from money. My parents, weren't really into investing. They're, 9-to-5 type people. My mom actually didn't even finish school, so high school. So when it came to investing, that was basically a completely new realm for me. But essentially, I grew up in a live below your means kind of thing. We weren't really struggling financially. It was kind of, live below your means mentality. You don't need to be driving the most fanciest car. And, my parents just worked a 9-to-5 job. And from a very early age, I was taught and instilled, the values of working hard and then also working smart. So working smart first and then working hard. But, when it came to investing, that wasn't really something that I was privy to. That wasn't something that I was exposed to as a child, right? But I kind of had to figure it out as I went along and grew up. But essentially what happened was I was big into computers. So I started to take graphic design. I started to look into different computer courses. So when I did post-secondary, I actually applied for graphic design and didn't get accepted. And basically didn't really know what I wanted to do after that. So I kind of had computers as my plan B, so to speak. So I ended up enrolling into the computer information systems course at Holland College. So I took computer programming, and then I took a set of networking courses as well. And then later on, I got into website development, and that's kind of what helped me with my graphic design passion. So I still had a little bit of that kind of in the background, right? I was doing mostly programming, but I kind of did what I wanted to do, which was graphic design. So I kind of balanced best of both worlds. And then things kind of dried up. I didn't really have a whole lot of opportunities with regards to programming and website development. And then a thing called Wix came along, which basically was all out of business. And then I started to look at other fields, and my brother actually worked at Invesco, which you guys probably are familiar with, QQQ. The Invesco Tech Trust, right?
Yep.
And then the experience that I had there, I basically started at the ground level, and I wanted to work my way up and potentially become a financial advisor. And I was actually like one course away from becoming a financial advisor, and I really wanted to pursue that. But then kind of just getting my feet wet, I realized that it was stressful enough managing my own money, let alone managing the money of other people, right? So I started to kind of take a back step from that, and then that kind of spurred my interest in investing, and the financial sector really developed a passion for it. And I've always had a passion for helping people and teaching people. So I decided to create POW Group, which is Pursuit of Wealth, where I would help people learn how to manage their own money, right? So that was kind of my passion and how I got involved. And it was basically just a hobby of mine, and then kind of teaching a few friends and family, and eventually created a group and a following and a community and a YouTube channel. And now I've got a YouTube and a following of over probably 25,000 people.
Nice.
So it's been a welcoming journey, and something that I wouldn't, say that I necessarily planned, but basically accidentally fell into the financial markets, fell in love with it. From a young age, though, I was, always just, looking at my dad and looking at following in his footsteps, looking at what he was doing, and what he was doing was kind of like more of a real estate portfolio. So I've got quite a bit of focus on real estate as well. It's actually how I became mostly successful with regards to finances, was the big boom during COVID. So when everything kind of started to explode, like in PEI, things just went through the roof, right? When I started buying probably about 10 years ago, everybody's like, oh, why are you buying in PEI? It's a dead market. It's never going to recover. Why not look at Halifax or New Brunswick or something like that, Nova Scotia? And I just said, I think, it's a matter of time. And then obviously I got a little bit lucky with COVID. Everything basically doubled. I had a friend of mine that bought a house, and in 3 years it doubled. So he bought it for like 200K and then went to 400K just as a result. I mean, at a certain point, some people can say, oh, you're lucky and you just time that perfectly. There's nothing, there was no skill involved, but I mean, if you don't risk it, you'll never ever make it, right? So if you don't, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So if you don't diversify a little bit, put all your eggs in one basket, then you'll never get that quote unquote lucky chance, right? That might present itself. And
there's a great saying that says, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah.
And the saying, first they laugh at you, first they ignore you, they laugh at you, then they fight you, then you win, right?
Yep.
And
they ask for a job, and then they ask
for money.
So that's basically how I got involved. And then obviously my passion for MJ, I knew that MJ was becoming a new burgeoning, emerging market. And, my passion for it was, just clearly, that's basically why I think I was put on this earth, was to kind of spread the MJ gospel, if you will. Also just crypto, I'm a tech guy, right, by nature. So the fact that crypto came along, I was a naysayer. I was very skeptical in the beginning, but the more I started to look into it, obviously, I took the orange pill, got introduced to Bitcoin just like everybody else. And then as I started to look into it, I saw a ton of other opportunities in the blockchain and crypto space. And then, in terms of POW Group, we specialize primarily on cannabis stocks. And then secondly, we focus on crypto and blockchain. So that's a little bit about myself and my history.
Yeah, that's how I found you. You were talking about a lot of the companies that I was constantly paying attention to. The cannabis space, there's not enough people delivering the news. There's not enough people just talking about the present state of the sector and the industry. Yep. And you were one of the few people out there just providing a steady stream of information on it all.
Yeah. Well, that's another thing too, right? Is when it comes to like YouTube and influencers, people don't necessarily want to talk about things when they're down in the dumps, when we're in a bear market and things are down like 99% from their all-time highs, because they don't want to seem like they don't know what they're doing, or they're in a dead space. And quite frankly, they're not getting views, right? Most people aren't getting the viewership, they're not getting the subscribers, they're not getting the money that comes along with it. But you have to factor in too is the fact that MJ is still federally illegal in the US. So a lot of the content that I post on YouTube isn't even monetizable, right? Yeah. Because it gets flagged. So I know that eventually, and it's the old saying goes too, right? If you're doing something for money, it's probably not going to amount to anything. But if you do it because you love it and you're passionate about it, the money will come later, right? And that's kind of my view with MJ is, okay, there's a lot of hurdles right now, but that just means that once they let the walls down, once they knock down the wall, then, you're going to just reap the rewards of that. And it's kind of like both sides of that coin, right? You're looking at one side of the coin and it's, it sucks that we're early, but at the other side of the coin, right? It's awesome that we're early because there's so much growth. And, if you're early to it and you're one of the innovators, then you have the opportunity to be, one of the leaders in the space, right? So
yeah. There's also a lot of opportunity because a lot of the institutions haven't gotten involved yet. So a lot of these investments that you talk about, as soon as all the big banks and everything, investment firms are able to, they're going to put money into that sector.
Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of it has to do with stigma and, the fiduciary duty that they have to shareholders. And, people aren't going to necessarily back, if a Fortune 500 company wants to invest, it's a little different with Constellations and Canopy Growth, for example, but, we all know how that kind of turned out for them. And it probably didn't resonate that well with their shareholders for Constellation, right? So they probably in hindsight wish they could have, avoided that, or maybe waited a little bit longer and got it for pennies on the dollar, so to speak. But, at the end of the day, they have shareholders to adhere to. And, it's when it's classified as a Schedule I drug, the same as heroin, I mean, it's a pretty hard sell, right?
Well, it looks like that's going to change this year, most likely.
Hopefully. Yeah, I'm hopeful. I think it's going to be, I think 2024 is going to be our year where, there's a lot of chatter going on that we could potentially get descheduling. I think that's more of a political posturing play. I don't think that that's the most likely scenario. I think that's ultimately where we're going to end up. And then fully, it'll be legal at the federal level in the US. Eventually it'll be descheduled from the CSA. And then, we'll be treated the same as alcohol and tobacco. I mean, realistically, at the end of the day, those are poison and MJ is medicine. So I don't think that they should even be on the same level as alcohol and tobacco. I think it should be on its own pedestal almost. But at the end of the day, they're going to take that incremental crawl, walk, run approach, and they'll more than likely reschedule to Schedule 3, and then they'll just create that opportunity to create the highs and lows and,
manipulate it.
Yeah, manipulate it. They'll sell on the way up, and then they'll create FUD. They'll say, we're going to deschedule it next, and then, there'll be some hurdles. There'll be another mini bear market or, another 50% dip, and everybody thinks, that's the end of MJ again. It's just the sentiment in MJ right now is finally starting to pick back up again, but it was the lowest I've ever seen in the last few months before all of the rescheduling hype, which, by the way, is something that I've been saying for I don't even know when I started saying it. I was very confident that it would happen in the next year, probably around the summertime. And then everybody was saying, August recess is coming up. There's no way they're going to get anything done. And then sure enough, end of August is when we got the recommendation from HHS. So just when you last think that anything's going to happen, right, the news comes out and it catches everybody off guard. And right now it's kind of the opposite situation where it's kind of like the Bitcoin ETFs where everybody and their grandmother knows that it's probably going to get approved. It even got approved. The spot Bitcoin ETFs got approved on the exact day that most people were expecting. And everybody was saying, it's probably going to be after market close on January 10th. And that's exactly what it was, right? And then ended up being a sell the news event. And then there was that whole shenanigans of the Twitter account or X account of the SEC getting hacked and not having 2FA. I don't even know if I want to comment on that. I don't necessarily believe that, but it's that sell the news event when everybody's expecting it. And then same thing, it reminds me of what's happening now with regards to rescheduling, right? When everybody's expecting it, the more we run into that event, the more likely that it's going to be a sell the news event, in my opinion. But I would say that it's pretty much a surefire deal that it's going to be done at some point this year.
Yeah, we've been hearing the word soon out of certain congressmen for so long now that I'm just patiently waiting for us to find out that Nancy Pelosi's husband has positioned himself into cannabis. And that'll be the last indicator that I need to go all in.
Well, I mean, even Senator Elizabeth Warren has voiced her opinion for MJ, and she's saying to fully legalize it now, which is like one of the only comments I've ever agreed coming out of her mouth. But with regards to her crypto stance, I really disagree with, she talks about how crypto's for money laundering and, criminals and sex traffickers and human traffickers. It's like,
Jamie Dimon from JP Morgan says the same thing. And I was surprised because I agree with some of what he says on other stuff, but I was like, I don't know why he feels that way about crypto.
It's because they're threatened, right? And they need to figure out how to get involved. And at the end of the day, I mean, people who are, even if you look at black market or illicit MJ dealers, right? They're not transacting in crypto. They're not transacting in e-transfers. They're transacting with cash, right? Cash is the de facto way and best way to, trade or to have a medium of exchange without any traceability, right? So even the cartels, right? I mean, they've got, millions of dollars buried everywhere, right? They're not doing it in crypto. And if they did it in crypto, what was that big hack, the pipeline hack that they actually found who they were, not only were they able to trace the crypto, they were able to get it back. So, it's 100% trackable, right? They can trace it. They can, through different internet providers, they can find out where it came from and they can trace it back and they can actually, get clawed back. So the fact that, cash is the number one method for illicit activity. And then, for Senator Warren to come out and say that, it's only crypto that they're using is it's disingenuous.
Yeah.
But it's great to see that she's kind of taking a different stance with MJ. And I don't know, I'm not really sure what to think about that. I don't know why she would be necessarily, a big proponent of that and not of crypto. Maybe because she's working for, the JP Morgans and the incumbents with regards to the banking system. And they're not really, MJ isn't really a threat to the banking system. Who knows? But it's great to see that we have at least some, some people backing MJ legalization when, it's not really a big thing in Congress at the moment, right? We knew that over the course of 2020, it was taking a back burner because of C19, and rightly so, right? There was a lot of other pressing issues, but it seems like every time you turn around now, there's some sort of, congressman or congresswoman talking about MJ, whether it be, in form of safer banking or rescheduling, descheduling. It's just a great thing to see, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah, the industry's heating up.
Absolutely.
For sure.
When it comes to crypto, which cryptos do you like?
So in terms of crypto, I don't hold any Bitcoin. I'll talk about the ones that I don't hold, because typically most people talk about what they do hold. And I kind of want to just start off by saying, I was introduced to crypto through Bitcoin. I was orange pilled. I was very skeptical in the beginning, but having a tech background, obviously that's the first thing you hear if you come across Bitcoin. I invested in Bitcoin when it was at around $3,000, I think, in 2017. And I made money off Bitcoin. I still think that Bitcoin might potentially be here for the long term, but who knows? I basically compare it to the dial-up of the internet days, right? Just because you're first doesn't mean you're last. But then there's going to be the high-speed versions, right, where you're going to see innovation flourish. And why stop at just Bitcoin, right? It doesn't really make sense to just stop innovating. So, and then Ethereum came along. But what a lot of people don't know is Ripple, the company, and XRP actually existed before Ethereum. And Vitalik actually slept on the couch of Stephen Thomas, which worked at Ripple, and Vitalik Buterin was actually an intern at Ripple. And actually, smart contracts is the idea that he got from Ripple. Ripple actually was thinking about doing smart contracts and going after that market, but they figured that they would go after cross-border payments and actually have utility, and that was the biggest use case that they could find. And then basically Vitalik went on to create Ethereum with Joe Lubin and a multitude, Charles Hoskinson, and then created that smart contracts, which we know majority of developers are developing on today. So I invested Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin in the early days. That was pretty much the story for most people, I'm sure. And then I made quite a bit of money. I didn't hold Bitcoin all the way up to 69,000. I sold it at around 40K. And then I was pretty much done with it. Even if it went to 80K, that's only 100% from there, right? And then even if it goes to 100K or 120K, I just didn't see the risk was to the downside, in my opinion. Yeah. And then with regards to Ethereum, I'm not sure how much you guys know with regards to Ethereum, but there's a lot of shade. There's actually Stephen Marioff is actually heading up a lawsuit right now where Ethereum could potentially be the next in line. And it's not looking good. If you look at John Deaton as well, he's actually teaming up with them as well. And there's a good chance that Ethereum was an illegal security during the initial ICO. And if that actually went to court, I think they would lose. Whereas Ripple, in their case, they actually were sued for selling unregistered securities of XRP, and to the tune of like $1.2 billion, I think. And it was actually deemed by Judge Torres that it was in and of itself not a security. Whereas I think if Ethereum actually went to trial or went to court, I think it would actually be deemed a security, not in and of itself intrinsically a security, but the way it was packaged and sold. If you remember that infamous video with Joe Lubin, and he talks about disguising whales and basically making it a possibility so that, you could buy through X number of accounts, you could buy an unlimited number, and it would be fully, it just wouldn't be exposed to the public, and they were disguising it. I actually did a short video on my YouTube channel about it. And if you look at the Ripple versus SEC case, they actually said that the institutional sales were deemed securities. So in that instance, if Ethereum was selling to institutional investors and they were disguising to large whales, which I'm sure JP Morgan was probably one of them, because they were it's actually been proven that they were investing in Ethereum before the mainnet launch. So if that's the case, it's looking like they're probably violating securities laws. And that doesn't mean that Ethereum itself is a security, but then you have to factor in staking too. Staking, you're relying on, there's a common enterprise there. You're getting rewards from the Ethereum network for staking your rewards. So therefore, it basically satisfies that prong of a common enterprise. So it's going to be interesting to see. Plus, the SEC has said that they don't view staking. And how many have they sued? They sued Coinbase for staking. I think Kraken as well, they sued for staking. And they are very reluctant to say that Ethereum is not a security. They came out and they said that they don't want to speak to one coin or one project, but they've said time and time again through regulatory opinion, not clarity, but they've said that Bitcoin is not a security, but they won't say anything about Ethereum. I'm just very skeptical when it comes to that. And then something that a lot of people don't talk about is Bitcoin. Who created it, right? We still don't know who created it. I mean, imagine if you were investing in Apple and you didn't know who the founder was, right? Like I was in and out, like I got my money, I made my money, and then I ran, because like I just can't invest in something that I don't know who the creators were, how much do they hold. Same thing with Ethereum. We don't know how much the Ethereum Foundation holds in terms of, they say that they practice internal transparency, whatever that means. And then Ripple's coming out with these reports all the time, with just quarterly reports for a private company. They don't even have to do that. They do that for transparency's sake. And they get, they get a lot of slack for that, because they're so transparent that people are saying, oh, look, like they're centralized, they're holding so much XRP. And I mean, fun fact, XRP came after Ripple, but I'm getting a little off track here, but I just want to kind of, go against the grain and not really follow the herd, because, back in the day when I was talking about Bitcoin, no one believed in Bitcoin. And, that was in the days where I found value in it. But whereas now everybody is sold on Bitcoin, Ethereum, and, they're talking about a Ethereum ETF, but I really doubt that's going to happen. Maybe, but I really don't think it will, just based on all of these lawsuits that could be coming down the pipeline, and the fact that the SEC still doesn't say that it's not a security. So I'm staying away from Bitcoin and Ethereum for that fact. And, if you look at Ethereum, where in the March 2020 lows, it was at what, $80, and then went up to almost $5,000. I mean,
wow, it was as low as 80. Wow, I don't remember that. Wow.
Yeah, March 2020, it went down to, I think, $80. I'll just bring it up here real quick. But
I should also note, Rod is a Canadian, so his numbers are slightly different than ours.
Yeah. No, I usually transact in US dollars, just because that is where the majority.
Oh, because there's the Ethereum USD, and then there's the Canadian one, right?
Yeah, it was $80. It was actually in December of 2018, and then in September. In $80 in December of 2018 in the bear market, and then it hit $90 in March 2020. So it wasn't March 2020, I was close. It was $80 at the low there in December 2018, and then in March 2020, C19, it dipped to 90. But yeah, from $90 to the high, it was up 62x, right? So $1,000 invested at the lows into $62,000. I just didn't really see the risk versus reward. I remember calling it out to my community when it was at $600. I said Ethereum's probably going to do like a 3x from here. And if you, I can't really bring up the chart here, but if you take a look at the Fibonacci extension levels, it actually was saying that the 2.618 was at 35, the 3.618 Fib extension was at 4,900, and we hit 4,867 on Coinbase. So, and that's actually what Bitcoin did as well. It hit its 3.618 Fib extension from the high to the 2017, 2018 bull market to the low of the 2019 bear market. And that's, quite often a great area to target in a new bull market is the 2.618, the 3.618. And, if Bitcoin can do it, if Ethereum can do it, then it increases the odds that other coins can do it. But basically the point of what I'm getting at here, and the point of it all, is that Ethereum and Bitcoin are basically, in my opinion, just, if you miss the trade, you miss the trade. There's going to be other opportunities. And I think in terms of the best opportunities from here, I think, XRP, XLM, I really like Algo, HBAR.
Ooh, I like that HBAR. That's like my favorite one. When it was at 4 cents, I stacked in everything.
Yeah, I got it the other day at 7 cents or 6 cents.
Yeah, on the small pullback when it from 9. Yeah, exactly. We're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Before we move to HBAR, I want to go back to XRP real quick. I hold some XRP. What's your long-term outlook on that? Do you think it's going to like 3 or 4x?
I would say a lot more than that.
Yeah, I would think so too.
Yeah, if we take a look at if you take a look at Bitcoin and Ethereum, and just kind of what they've done, and keep in mind too, XRP passed Ethereum for number 2 in market cap back in 2018, and during that time as well, they had that removal of the Korean exchanges from coin market cap. So in theory, it actually should have been a lot higher than what it was. And
yeah, I feel like that even now because they got the SEC ruling, they got that behind them finally.
And I mean, it's been in the top 10. It's so resilient. I mean, imagine another project that gets sued from the SEC and fights a 3-year SEC battle that costs over $200 million. What crypto project? I mean, look at Library, right? They bankrupted Library, and they just didn't have the funds to do it. And all the meanwhile, XRP stayed in the top 10, and it was delisted from all the major exchanges in the US.
Couldn't even sell it. Yeah.
No. So it just goes to show that it has staying power, right? And again, if you take a look at Bitcoin from its high to the low there in the 2018, 2019 bear market, the 3.618 was sitting at 62,000, and the 4.236 was at 72. We had 69. So we actually got above the 3.618 extension level. And then if we took, again, I mentioned that Ethereum got above it as well, and it actually hit its 3.618 at 49, just under 4,867. And then if we take a look at XRP, again, I'm not bringing up the chart here, but I have it up on my computer. But if you want to just kind of use that same sort of, barometer, if we were to do something similar to Bitcoin and Ethereum, which again, we know XRP passed Ethereum in terms of market cap back in 2018. If we hit the 3.618 like Bitcoin, like Ethereum did, that would put us around $11.75 USD. And then
$11. Wow.
What's your time frame as far as like when you think it will really run up?
Well, we just had a monthly EMA 12 and 26 bull cross, and we've been consolidating now. Realistically, since the all-time highs, it has now been 2,191 days. So we're looking at 72 months of basically just ranging between the high there at 330 and the low at 11 cents. And we haven't hit a new all-time high in 7 years. So it's been a long time, and it's going to, like they say, that the longer the base, the higher in the space, the greater the accumulation, the greater the expansion. In terms of time frame, it's always hard to predict time. I wish I could find somebody who knew how to predict time accurately, because, like I say, it truly is the hardest thing to do. I've been, saying for a while now that I think that altcoins are going to run after, we see major upside in Bitcoin. I think there's probably one more run left of Bitcoin. Whether or not we hit all-time highs, that's going to be another question. I think we potentially could get to around 75, 80K. And then everybody thinks we're going to 100K, and then that's actually where Bitcoin tops out. And then I think that's when altcoins are going to run. But I think April is a realistic time frame, because we have an update with the SEC versus Ripple case in April, where that could be the end of it. That could be where they potentially settle, or they just get an outright win. And going back to what I said earlier, the institutional sales that were deemed securities and a violation of securities laws, 95% of those sales were outside of the US. So they don't even have any jurisdiction over those sales, right? So how can they really be penalized or, punished for something that didn't even occur on US soil, right? And then other than that, the fact that it's actually higher in value, right? Something that they look at as well is if people are down on their investment. Whereas if you look at where XRP was at the low when the SEC sued them, they were at 17 cents. And then here we are at 50 cents. So there's really no real damage, right, that was done in terms of a, loss of capital perspective. And in most cases, it's performing quite well. So I think, if I really read the tea leaves, if I read the chart, we actually are seeing and the reason why I was so confident in saying that Ethereum was going to explode in value is because of the fact we were seeing a weekly 50 weekly moving average and 200 weekly moving average cross. I'm just looking at the chart here now. When that happened, it was in December of 2020, and the price was at $600, and then it went to almost 5,000. And right now we're seeing the same thing on XRP, where the 50 weekly and the 200 weekly are crossing. The last time that happened on XRP, we went from 17 cents to $2, and that was before we had legal clarity. So we're potentially seeing right now the 50 weeklies at 53 cents and the 200 weeklies at 56 cents. So when the shorter term is below the longer term and they cross, it's a very bullish cross. Like on the daily time frame, that would be called a golden cross. But on the weekly time, I don't know what you want to call that. But that it's even more bullish, right? And it takes way longer for these moving averages to play out because it's on the weekly time frame. So it's generally a lot more explosive when we do run. And we also have the 100 weekly at 49 cents, which we're back testing now. I think we could see a little bit more downside. I think we could potentially go down to around 40 cents or 39 cents on XRP. And then I think we're going to see
let that happen.
We're going to see a massive move.
It hit like 90 something cents in the summer.
Yeah. So after the declaration that the Judge Torres said that it was not in and of itself a security, it shot up to 94 cents, 94 and a half cents, basically. But a lot of people were saying, we're probably going to go to all-time highs on a verdict if Ripple does win, and XRP in and of itself is not a security, then we're probably going to go to new all-time highs. But the kicker was Bitcoin was consolidating, right? There was, the FTX debacle. There was still the Terra Luna, Celsius, all this stuff that was going on. And it was just, the macro wasn't great for crypto at that point. Whereas now we have the spot Bitcoin ETFs. We have the halving coming up in April. We have the case versus Coinbase. I think that could be even tossed entirely. The Grayscale case was very embarrassing for the SEC. So at this point, I still think that settlement versus the SEC and Ripple, I still think settlement is the most likely scenario. I think over 90% of cases end up settling. And I think they'll just be, grasping at straws at this point, and they'll probably try to at least come away with some sort of a win. And a settlement might give them just that. So I think into April is realistically a great time frame where we could see massive price appreciation on XRP and maybe even new all-time highs. And then even a Ripple IPO, if the case settles, it could be from there 6 to 9 months, probably where we see an IPO from Ripple, I would say more than likely. It's hard to say if they would do that before the case resolution because, why would they want to do that when they're still battling it out in court, right?
Interesting. So when it comes to Hedera, do you see the same thought, the same expansion? Back to those past the previous highs we had?
Yep, I definitely do. I think utility will win the day. And, we're kind of moving into that era where we had our meme coin phase, right? Where, Dogecoin doesn't really do anything. It's slow, it's clunky. It's technologically more advanced than Bitcoin. But, it's still slow, it's still clunky. It doesn't really have any institutional adoption. It's basically just pure speculation. And there's tens of thousands of cryptos now. Like there's probably going to be, a couple hundred or, 20 main ones at the end of the day, right? It's the same with the .com era, right? The pets.com, those that didn't have a great business model, those that were frauds got, basically got exposed. They got pushed out of the system, and the real winners ended up coming and emerging, 5-10 years later. And I think the same thing's going to happen with cryptos where, we'll probably have 5 to 10, maybe 20 of the main projects that will dominate the market. And there'll probably be like 3 or 5 main ones that control like 60 or 50% of the market share, right? And then there'll be just based on use case, right? If they're specializing on one particular like decentralized file storage, right? That's going to be a huge thing. Cross-border, right? Obviously Ripple and XRP are going to probably be the leader there. And then there's, decentralized finance, there's dApps, there's all kinds of use cases that we can use with regards to blockchain. And we need, like, one project isn't going to solve it all. And I guess at the end of the day is when it comes to crypto, just like remove, and I see a lot of it in MJ as well, is the tribalistic nature of investors and traders. And not so much with traders, because traders don't really care. They just want to make money. And investors are so tribalistic. They're so involved in their own, they got tunnel vision, right? And they don't want to see other projects flourish because they might not be diversified, or they want to pump their own bags, right? And it's the same thing with these Bitcoin maximalists. Well, of course they're only talking about Bitcoin is because that's where the majority of their money is sitting in, right? So they're just talking their own book, right? And it's the same thing with JP Morgan. They said, if I think it was back in 2018, if any of our employees are caught talking about crypto or even selling crypto to our clients, you're fired. And it was later on proven that during that time frame, they were one of the biggest buyers of Bitcoin during that bear market. So,
fun fact, I used to work there.
oh, really?
We're one of the biggest banks as far as like controlling employees. We used to have to go into the office 5 days a week. I hated it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're notorious for, oh, you got to be in at least 3 days now. So yeah, none of that surprises me.
Well, I mean, they're talking their book, right? And
yeah,
at the end of the day, they it's kind of like MS when it comes to MJ. It's very similar with regards to the incumbents there, right? Who are the incumbents? Big alcohol, big tobacco, big pharma, right? I used to work for a pharmaceutical company, multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical company, and the first thing that I noticed once it became legal in Canada was a race to the finish. It was who's going to, like they couldn't figure out fast enough how they were going to get their feet involved and dip their legs in, dip their feet in and once they dipped their feet in, they were in full force. Like that was the talk of the town in the pharmaceutical company that I worked for many years. It was, from 2018 when it went legal to 2021 when I stopped working there. They had to get their Health Canada license, and then they had to get security cameras and fencing all around the perimeter. And it was their number, like they weren't necessarily into THC or anything like that, but they were into CBD and the medicinal part of it. But that for a couple of years at least was basically their main focus was getting involved, right? And they were actually one of the big manufacturers of opioids. And I won't name any names, but they were actually one of the big companies that got involved in the lawsuit where, the amount of deaths and opioid addictions and whatnot just spiraled out of control. And they got involved in multi-hundred million dollar lawsuits. And I think MJ is going to be, obviously something that's going to really kind of set that chip on a better path. And, obviously, I just gave my partner and I were just welcoming our daughter into the world a week ago. And, one of the options that she had for painkillers was fentanyl, right? So, I mean, there's always going to be options for that. But, the more we can depend on it less, I think is going to be ultimately. And I think Boris Jordan, actually, the co-founder of Cureleaf and executive chairman, has said that I think he partnered with, was it the University of London or something like that? They're actually studying how MJ can be used as pain medication to substitute opioids. So obviously, Big Pharma has a lot to lose there. And once they figure out how to get their paws all over it, right, and make money off of it, it's the same thing with JP Morgan and crypto, right? They have JPM coin for crying out loud. So
yeah, exactly.
But people aren't going to trust JPM coin. Like I think Citigroup was talking about getting involved into crypto and cross-border remittances. But again, the whole point of crypto is to remove the trust factor, to remove the trust barrier, where if you can just rely on mathematics and code, there's no greed, there's no emotion, right? It just works, right? It executes. And, at the end of the day, all of these countries look at what's going on around the world. Heart goes out to those affected by all of the geopolitical events that are going on in Israel and Palestine. And, it's Ukraine, Russia, and there's talks about China and Taiwan, and that could only spiral from there. Iran getting into the mix. If we had and a lot of this has to do with the dominance of the US dollar, right? And the hegemony of the dollar. And eventually, it's going to create a catastrophic event. And I think crypto was inevitably the solution to prevent all of this from escalating to a point where, we don't even want to see what happens. Because if we can just rely on mathematics, rely on computer code, where, we don't have to trust on, like when you send money from one country to another, you have to trust that that country's currency is as valuable as they say it is. And they're not artificially, saying that it's stronger than it is. And then you have to wait for, a week for it to transfer. And sometimes it gets lost. The fees are exorbitant, right? Like, especially when you're transferring from, let's say Canada to back into the Philippines. Well, 5 or 10% of their money that they're sending back to their family, like that's a lot eating into, that hard work that they put in, that hardworking money that they earn. And, these people could use that extra money, right? And through stablecoins, it's going to create in my opinion, I think the US dollar will succeed ultimately in the end. And then it's going to make it stronger. I think it's going to make the yen stronger, the won, it's going to make the pound the euro, all of these currencies will get stronger because they'll peg these stable coins to these currencies, right? And what are people going to do when they get involved into crypto? They're going to buy stable coins, and they're going to be backed 1-to-1 to whatever, if it's the US dollar. If more people get into, like through Starlink, right? Everybody has a cell phone. So if, what is it? I think a third of the world or a quarter of the world is unbanked. If now everybody has a cell phone, if people who don't have a bank account have a cell phone and they can now join the new financial system, they can get their Starlinks, then they're part of this new financial system. And if they decide to buy a stable coin, like cash out of Bitcoin or Ethereum or XRP, and they want to sit in a stable coin because they think the market's going to drop, well, that's going to increase the value of US dollars, for example, if they're holding like USDT or USDC, because they're going to have to hold those dollars in reserve. And it's just going to create more demand for these fiat currencies. But whether or not, the system is going to implode before then, I think it will. I think fiat currency is still going to be around, but it's probably going to look different than it is today. It'll be backed by, maybe a basket of things, right? Maybe gold, silver, a crypto or two. Who knows, right? But it's an interesting time that we're going into here. And, with regards to crypto and MJ, there's always going to be incumbents. There's always going to be people who are reluctant to change, wish they could just hit the pause button and try to figure out a way to catch up, because as we know, technology just has a way of, kind of getting away from everybody, and it just grows at such a rapid rate.
So this is a transition. What are your thoughts on like Fed coins? Is Canada making their own Fed coin?
I don't think so. I don't think Canada is going to create, like, you mean like a CBDC?
Yeah.
Yeah, central bank digital currency. I don't think so. Just because of the amount of sheer pushback that they got from the whole trucker situation. They froze accounts. I mean, it really is unconstitutional. It's a breach of privacy. You're invading people's, money and their rights. And it just, in my opinion, I don't think it's a great tree to bark up. Like, it's just not a good idea. And there's going to be a lot of civil unrest if that's the avenue that they decide to go down. And then you've seen Swami dropped out of the presidential race in the US and endorsed Trump. And through speaking with Trump actually said, if I become president, I will make sure that a CBDC never happens, because it's tyranny and, it can be used for nefarious purposes. But I mean, China's doing it. It's not like no one's ever going to do it. It's just a question of, like, I think it was Tim Draper that said, strong leaders promote, or weak leaders promote fear, and strong leaders promote like leadership. And, they want people, they want everybody to flourish, right? They want everybody to be successful. They don't want to promote fear. They want to promote strong leadership, strong leaders, try to make everybody better, right? And if all you're doing is instilling fear into everybody, you're doing everybody a disservice, right? And you're just making more people reliant on the government. And something that's been coming up a lot lately is UBI, Universal Basic Income in Canada. And again, I think we talked about this before the stream, is that Canada is usually that guinea pig. They were the guinea pig when it came to Canadian legalization of MJ. They were the guinea pig with regards to the spot Bitcoin ETF, which came out in, I think, 2021, just beginning of 2021. And then now they're going to be the guinea pig with regards to UBI and Universal Basic Income. And I think that's ultimately where we're going, right, with AI and the amount of jobs that are going to be lost. So I think like Canada is a great guinea pig and test market for a lot of the G20 and the rest of the world, all these major nations and the United Nations. And quite frankly, we're just across the border. So a lot that happens in Canada, we're very reliant on the US and vice versa. I mean, obviously way more in Canada, we're way more reliant on the US market, but I think it's a great, test market for them to introduce a lot of these new concepts, right? But I don't think CBDCs are going to be a thing in Canada or the US. I think they're going to rely on the private sector. I think they're going to, really rely on like your Circles of the world, your USDCs, where they're going to make everything privatized, and they're going to, your Nancy Pelosi's, her husband invest in all of these private companies, right? And it's just, I think that's the way to go. The government is slow, they're antiquated, they're not going to lead innovation. They're not going to be at the forefront of innovation. So I think they're going to leave it up to the private sector, and then they're going to rely on stable coins and then regulating the activities, right? Regulating the off ramps and the on ramps of money, and anti-money laundering, KYC, know your customer. That's going to be a big thing. And then you're going to have some countries like China that just enforce the CBDC, and if you want to live here, too bad, so sad. You have to follow our monetary rules, right? But whether or not one's better than the other, I don't really believe that one's better than the other. They both serve different purposes, right? Like you can use a central bank digital currency for good, right? Like, for example, if you were to use a central bank digital currency in Canada, well, for let's say people that are addicted to opioids or people who are drug addicts, if they're getting money from the government in form of cash or in form of money that goes directly into their bank account, they can just spend it on more drugs or in their life even further. Whereas with a CBDC, you could program it so that they can only spend it at grocery stores or gas stations or something like that, right? So like there's a silver lining to everything, and I think there can be bad and just like anything, right? It's just cash can be used for bad, cash can be used for good, right? So I personally don't think that we're going in that direction, though.
I'm happy that you see it that way, because like I think once a country gets a controlled currency, much more controlled currency where they can turn on purchases, then you'll have the social credit system. And once the social credit system gets in, only collapse will get it out.
Yeah. And what's that? Was it the Black Mirror? Episode where they, she's going around on her phone and she's just looking for acceptance, and everybody's like negatively rating her, and then she can't even like rent a car or anything.
Was that the one about the ratings, like giving reviews to everything? Yeah.
Terrifying, absolutely terrifying.
Yeah.
I know I upset people. I would hate to have to walk around self-censoring all day, every day.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of that going on at the moment. There's a lot of foreshadowing, and actually, if you remember the movie Contagion, eerily similar to what happened in 2020
pandemic.
Like even the ending was like verbatim on what they said it basically derived from, right? So a certain, I try not to get too far off into conspiracy land, but
conspiracy land.
No, conspiracies are fun.
I call that factual land, and then you find out it's a fact after 6 months.
Wait, conspiracy facts?
Yeah. Conspiracies that turn into facts. Yeah.
Right.
The unpopular opinion, I guess, is a more formal way to put it.
Yeah.
I think the last time I checked, there was over 400 stores, and a lot of lawmakers are saying that they're talking about making corner stores into like where you can buy MJ products. But I kind of joke around a lot about that because there's more MJ stores and liquor stores here than there is corner stores, so convenience stores. So in my opinion, you might as well just make the MJ stores, convenience stores, because there's more of them around. But at the end of the day, the market here is privatized. So, I come from the East Coast of Canada, and I think in Nova Scotia as well, New Brunswick and PEI, it's all government owned. So in PEI, there's actually only like three MJ stores on the whole island.
Wow.
Whereas here in Alberta, there's like, if I take a drive down Jasper Avenue, the main avenue here, there's like 10. So there's hundreds here. And I don't think that's going to last. I think that it's probably a lot of the mom and pop shops are going to go away, but the High Tides, the Canna Cabanas, your Value Buds, your Nova Cannabis, your SNDLs of the world are probably going to own that market.
Yeah.
But there's definitely going to be, some mom and pop shops that end up surviving, but I just think it's a little saturated at the moment. And even Fire and Flower went under. Where a lot of people were saying that Fire and Flower is going to be the leader in the space, and didn't take very long, and
they died.
Yeah. But yeah, Canna Cabana is my preference. It's my store of choice. That's pretty much where all my consumer dollars are spent. I really like Value Buds as well, but I think Canna Cabana is it's growing. They took the discount price approach after Value Buds. So Value Buds is in the name, right? Mm-hmm. And then I think Value Buds started the discount version, and kind of undercutting everybody else. But then what Canna Cabana did was introduce the membership, the elite membership as well, and then they're basically the Costco of cannabis now. Yeah. So, and they're able to discount all the prices. So they took the same approach where they want to offer the lowest price and, have the most market share. So they're able to lower their prices, have a little bit less margin, but ultimately, they're going to dominate that market. And I really like what they're doing. I really like their choice of products. And Value Buds, I find that they usually, every time I go there, they're usually sold out of a lot of stuff. Canna Cabana has a little bit better inventory, I've noticed.
I know that you're also interested in Tilray long term. I definitely think that right now their financials don't look super hot, but their business model is attractive. The entire concept of focusing on beverages instead of smokables and edibles is pretty attractive to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, right now with the narrative of rescheduling, uplisting to the NYSE and the NASDAQ for the US MSOs, a lot of people still ask me to this day, how come you're so bullish on Tilray? I'm not looking at 2 years from now. I'm not looking at 6 months from now. I'm looking at 5, 10 plus years, right?
Yeah.
And one thing that we've seen in the Canadian market is everybody that tries to be everything to everybody, companies that try to be that, they end up getting nowhere, right? And right now with the Canadian market, we've seen how that rollout happened, right? There was 20 LPs all doing the same thing, whereas now there's like 4, right? The big ones are Tilray, Canopy, and to be honest, I don't even see anybody buy any Canopy products anymore. I never buy any Canopy products. I buy, the odd, the odd Aurora product, which even troubles me to say that because I never bought any of their products initially. I hated them for a long time. I've kind of been buying a little bit of their drinks lately, but Tilray's the majority of where I spend my money. There's some like Chronos, Cron. They're another big one. Organogram, I spend a lot of money on their products. I really like Organogram. But in terms of, the Canadian landscape, it consolidated in a very, very short period of time. And whereas now you have 4 or 5 main companies with not a lot of overlap. A lot of them are kind of focusing on their area of expertise. And I think they're going to start outsourcing a lot of their different needs from other LPs as well, right? The rising tide lifts all boats. And I think, with regards to High Tide, SNDL, Tilray, Organogram, Aurora, like they're all very differentiated. If you look at Aurora is mostly medical now. If you look at Chronos is, a cash cow. I don't think they really know what they were trying to do yet.
I think Chronos has all that money from Altria Group. Yeah.
So I think
as soon as they're allowed, the tobacco giants are just going to start buying up cannabis companies, and watching that relationship that they built with Chronos really kind of indicated what I think the future is going to look like. I think big tobacco and several alcohol players, they want exposure to cannabis.
And there were some rumors that Chronos was actually going to get acquired by Cureleaf, I believe.
Okay.
There wasn't any teeth to that. They actually denied it later on, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't conversations happening.
Yeah.
And you got to think too, is a lot of LPs are going to become MSOs and a lot of MSOs are going to become LPs. And with regards to the LPs, it's hard for US MSOs to get into Canada because it's going to be a lot of CapEx requirements. It's not really a market that they really want to focus on anyway, because there's more people in California than there is in all of Canada. So why even bother? But if they could acquire an LP, like if, for example, if Cureleaf were to acquire Cron, the amount of money that they have on their balance sheet, the cash that they have on their balance sheet is very attractive and justifies it alone. But then they also have Chronos is actually big in, they're a big beneficiary of Germany as well, which we know that vote could come in February. So not only is it a entry into the Canadian market, it makes it more appealing because they can enter the EU GMP zones, which is, Europe and Germany is going to be the big ones as well. And a lot of MSOs don't really have, they're more focused on a state to state market, right? On a state to state basis. So they're basically just trying to figure out their own backyard. Whereas Cureleaf is a name that is very heavy in Germany as well. So I think it really makes sense that I think Cureleaf may even potentially acquire Cron, but I think Cron, I don't foresee Cron being here long term. I think they're either going to get bought out by another company, and then they'll probably go through some sort of merger or acquisition. And then, you look at Organogram. Organogram is a 100% pure MJ play. They don't have any other and they've got a $124 million investment from BAT, British American Tobacco. And again, you start to see Constellation Brands invested in Canopy. You got British American Tobacco in Organogram. You got Altria in Cron. So big alcohol, big tobacco, big pharma, right? They've got their paw all over this now. And then, Canopy's a little bit of a different beast. Like Canopy's like a hybrid. They've got their Canadian operations, but they're becoming more asset light now. They're more into like endorsements and like celebrities and more of the ancillary businesses. Like think of their stores in Bickle. I really like that about them as well. I think that's a great company and a great asset for them. But they've also got Canopy USA. I think they have 17% ownership in TerraSend. They've got lots of great potential businesses once federally permissible. They have acreage as well in their wheelhouse if they legalize or deschedule. If it becomes full-blown legalized in the US, then they could potentially acquire acreage. So they've got a lot of great assets there. And then Tilray they have number one market share here in Canada. They have a great beverage business in the US, and I really like that they're focusing on craft beer, because craft beer is where it's at. Like I'm here in Alberta, we call it, Alberta, Canada, and like it's all about craft beer. And like I never go to I try not to consume that much alcohol anymore. I try to do more of the Cannabis. A dream of mine is to actually have a Cannapub where you just come in and you have different forms of MJ infused beers and like a craft.
Wow.
That's something that I'd love to do. And it's not
Andre doesn't consume alcohol or tobacco and won't even invest into alcohol or tobacco. And when I try to talk him into buying anything cannabis, he's like, nope, can't do it.
No.
I mean, I'm planning on buying High Tide at like $17 now and selling it.
He keeps trolling me. He's raising the price every time he brings it up.
Yeah. Well, once you start to get involved, it's like, I know people that would never ever consume any MJ. And, you give them an edible. Like I went home to my parents' house on the summertime and Mom had these Aurora gummies. And I'm like, who are these? And she's like, oh, those are mine. And they help me with sleep. And, once people can realize that, there's only like 2 milligrams and I'm not really going to feel any effects, like it's just that stigma, right? But yeah, I mean, I think craft beer is a great focus for Tilray because I think they're going to make craft beer is growing. Whereas like if you look at your Coors Light, your Budweiser's, like,
they're struggling. Yeah, they're struggling.
So the craft beer is on the up and up. And look at the Extra Pale Ale 420 Sweetwater Brewing Co. Like it has 420 in the name. The second that it's descheduled or fully legalized in the US, I mean, they can just instantly create a non-alc version with MJ infused. And then what else? They have their hemp business. They have their distribution business. Their CC Pharma, I think, is now Tilray Medical. So they have a lot of great attractive assets, and I think they're operating in like 36 countries now or something like that. Crazy, like 5 continents. Tilray is going to be a juggernaut, in my opinion. And then you've got your SNDLs, which they're completely different as well. They're into retail, so they have retail MJ locations. They have retail alcohol locations. So they have like Liquor Depot, Ace Liquor here in Canada, Wine and Beyond. So they're focusing on the retail aspect, but they also have, they're actually like a vertical producer as well. So they're actually producing it as well. But I think they're going to probably focus more on that retail aspect. But you can see just after 5 short years here in Canada, how much these companies are differentiating from each other. And each one's kind of focusing on one core aspect of the industry, right? And you have your ancillary businesses as well. And I think that's ultimately where the US is going. And I think we talked about this before offline was, the US MSOs, there's so many of them and we just don't know. That's why I don't really have a lot of dollars invested into one particular company in the US, because we just don't know who the real winners are going to be yet. We have a pretty good idea, right? Everybody thinks Green Thumb, True Leaf, Curaleaf.
In the US, they're all used to operating in their own little markets, and so they all it's like a quasi monopoly situation. There's like 50 different markets, and some of these companies have almost pseudo monopolies.
Yeah,
and then, as soon as the laws change and they all have to start competing against each other, I think that we're going to see a situation similar to what happened in Canada. Prices will drop, competition will be fierce. It's hard to tell who's going to be the winners and how they're going to adapt in order to find success.
Yeah, there's going to be a huge price war. There's going to be, the price war will be good inevitably because it's going to combat the illicit market. That that was the problem with Canada, though. When we first, well, not only that, it was the quality was terrible. If you actually bought some of the MJ, the flower that came out like from Canopy, it was like 12%, right? Like people, it was almost laughable, and you're paying like $40 for 3.5 grams, right? Like it was
not good.
Just garbage. And then, okay, it was safe and everything. I'll give you that, but not sustainable and not a viable solution for the future. And then that ended up, people went back to the black market or the illicit market because they just had a guy and it was better stuff and it was cheaper. Whereas now, like I can go get from Canna Cabana, I can go get an ounce of bake sale from Tilray, which used to be Hexo. I can go get an ounce of bake sale, great bud, big, thick buds, 20% THC for $60 Canadian. So like $40 US.
Wow.
So it's like, you can't compete with that. And then, whereas the illicit market here now is thriving on edibles, but in Canada, we're still like, this is another thing that bothers me too, is the federal government has said that, I think it was like a year ago, they said it's time for the federal government to catch up and support the MJ industry here in Canada. They just keep talking. They never ever do anything, but we still have a cap on edibles and drinks for 10 milligrams.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you go to Colorado, which I've been there, I've done videos on it, you can buy, Wana gummies or whatever, 100 milligrams per pack, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's really hindering the industry here as well. Obviously excise taxes as well, but you can still only buy 10 milligrams per pack in Canada. So there's a petition going around to get that to 100 milligrams. And I think they did the similar thing with alcohol. Like they didn't come out with moonshine the second they ended alcohol prohibition, right? But I mean, at the end of the day, how many people are going to overdose on weed? Right? I mean, you could go buy like a quart or, a Mickey and kill yourself on vodka.
In 15 minutes?
Yeah, 15 minutes or less. And then, MJ, I think the formula is you would have to smoke your body weight in like less than an hour to overdose, right?
Yeah, the LDL, the lethal 50-50 lethal dose on cannabis is like you have to eat more than your stomach could hold.
Yeah, it's a physical impossibility.
I want to get in a question about Tilray. We were on for that. In 2018, when it had that big run up, like what caused that? And then like it crashed within like a few months.
Yeah, so I think the main driver of that was the Dems taking control of the Senate and hopes of U.S. legalization, right?
Okay.
Tilray being, and then there was also that meme craze as well. So we had that, SNDL was a big one. We had, GameStop. I think Tilray was one of the other big ones as well. I mean, Afria actually did the best. If you look back at that time, Afria was actually at all-time highs, whereas I don't think any other MJ name in Canada. Canopy got close. I think it was like a few dollars within its all-time high, but Tilray was, obviously not going to probably get back to its all-time high at 300 after the IPO. Like that's
$2,
like 5-10 years, yeah. But I think most of it was just the hype from that. And like I say, I know people in the US that ask me all the time, how do I buy Cureleaf? Like, you're in the US and you can't buy Cureleaf, right? They can't buy
brokers.
Yeah, their brokers don't allow OTC, or they can't buy in the Canadian exchanges. And then I know people that are in POW Group that live in Denmark, Copenhagen, and he said all he can buy is the NASDAQ listed names. So you can only buy Tilray, Canopy, your SNDLs, and your high tides, right?
Yeah.
You can't even buy MSOS, which I found to be surprising as well.
Yeah.
But eventually, when we get the DEA headline, or, if we get any kind of major headline in cannabis, people are just that's going to be the first thing that they go to is, think of the Robin Hoods. They're going to go and they're going to buy your Tilrays, Canopies, not because they want to, it's because that's really their only option, right?
Yeah.
So I think Tilray, reason why we ran up that high was because of the fact that people were bullish on the outlook of MJ with the Dems taking control of the Senate. But I mean, if we ran that high on hopes of U.S. legalization, just imagine what could happen if we actually see full-blown legalization.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the meltdown, I mean, I think it's just par for the course. All the other names, right? Well, Canadian names got hit more. If you look at Canopy from its high to the low, Tilray, you're down about 97, 98% from the February 2021 highs. Not even the all-time highs, just the February 2021 highs. And then if you take a look at Trulieve was down, I think, like 92% from its February 2021 an all-time high down to its low. Green Thumb I think was down like 80%. So there was some in the US that held up better. But even MSOS ETF from its high, all-time high, and high of February 2021.
So I think we're running low on time. Does anybody have any last-minute questions?
I just want to wrap up the Tilray point. So you don't see it getting back to like where it was at that time in 2018?
You mean like the $300?
Yeah.
I do see it going back to $300.
Okay.
It's just,
Cool.
I do think
not quickly though.
No.
Right. It's
No.
just how within 6 months it like went up and then like just crashed.
Yeah, I think we would have to see full-blown legalization for that to happen. I think we would need to see, exporting to the U.S. Being a big factor as well. We would need to see, MJ-infused beverages. We would need to see, and we've already seen it, right? We already have Tilray products. Like they have a deal with the Denver Broncos where, they have a booth in the arena where they're selling their beverage brands, right? So, and then they just acquired 8 beverage brands from Anheuser-Busch, the maker of Budweiser. So eventually, you're not going to be able to smoke MJ. You're not going to be able to light up a joint in the Denver Broncos arena, right? Like you're not going to be able to smoke it openly, but they'll have beverages there. And again, that's where I think Tilray differentiates itself from the rest of the pack, is it's going to dominate that market, which I think is very underrated. And at that point, then yeah, I think the sky's the limit. I think we could be back up to a $200 to $300 stock.
Yeah, I really like their business model, and I have been patiently waiting for their financials to improve to enter a position.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you're a value investor right now, if you look at the numbers, I mean, pretty much for any Canadian name, you cringe. But I definitely see the merit. I see the value in value investing. Like I understand the concept, but with regards to very high growth industries, I think value investing is going to become more valuable and more pertinent once we start to really differentiate who the real winners are, right? Yeah. So if you look at, Microsoft and Apple, for example, like Warren Buffett didn't invest in those in the early days because it didn't make value investing sense. Whereas now, now that we know who the winners are in the tech space, value investing becomes very important. And then Tesla, for example, Tesla wasn't very popular among financial analysts because it, wasn't profitable and it had a lot of red flags, right? But whereas now it's hard to kind of predict the future growth into numbers, right? People say numbers don't lie, but at the end of the day, there's so many catalysts. If it's a high growth industry, you can't possibly be looking at the sheer numbers because there's a lot that factor into it, right?
Yeah, the catalysts are part of the fundamentals.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we need to wrap up because people have to go. So, Rod, it's been fantastic having you on. Thank you for all your informed opinions.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Great
Thanks,
talking
man.
to you.
It was awesome.
Yeah. It was great. Yep.